The city of College Station has released its proposed budget for the new fiscal year. Tonight, we take a deeper look into the budget for first responders. Plus, we take a look into the funding some Brazos Valley schools could be receiving to help aid students who fell behind due to the pandemic.
And we have seen a few more isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms across our area, and I think this pattern will continue Thursday and Friday. But as we head into the weekend, that's when temperatures really start to heat up. Your 25 News starts right now.
Connecting the Brazos Valley, this is KRHD News.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for KRHD News at 6. I'm Hallie Jones. The city of College Station is rolling out its proposed budget for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. KRHD reporter Rachel Espayat has a deeper look into how it could affect first responders.
With about 28% of the city's budget, the College Station Police Department is proposed to get $1.1 million. That's about a 5% increase from last year's budget.
Bryan College Station is growing leaps and bounds, so our law enforcement needs to mirror the growth because of the expansion.
A portion of that money is expected to go towards replacing patrol vehicles and adding 3 positions, 2 detectives and a police sergeant. Nationwide conversation about defunding the police sparked some questions about College Station putting more money towards the department. Some residents feel it's not necessary in this city because of the bond already built between the police and community.
Police officers to be friends and your neighbors as opposed to just enforcers. That's the key difference. We're continuing, meaning our community, is continuing to do what has worked for many years.
The College Station Fire Department was the second department proposed to get the most money. The department plans to purchase a 5th ambulance to meet the growing demand.
Just looking at the amount of time that all 4 of our units are occasionally tied up, actually quite often. And so it just gives us that extra capacity that we need for the demands of the community.
But it is very frustrating whenever you see a call pending and your ambulances are out of stock, or you have a call in your own home district and you're out on a call and you know that it's going to be a little while for that heart attack or that stroke to get a paramedic to them.
This ambulance will only be used during peak times to maximize its usage, but the department expects the need to grow more as the community continues to grow.
This is a good strategic step in that direction that meets our needs for right now, but sets us up for success down the road.
The proposed budget isn't expected to be finalized until late August. In College Station, Rachel Espayat, KRHD News.
These are some of the things proposed in the 2021-2022 College Station budget. Fire and police are both being allocated over $1 million. $735,000 will go to things like road repairs and other public works. And nearly $1.4 million will go to things like water, wastewater, and electricity. And $71.5 million has been proposed for capital projects. This includes things like a new City Hall project, an expansion of the Lick Creek wastewater treatment plant, upgrades to the Spring Creek substation, and rehab for the Greens Prairie Water Tower. After the pandemic shut down in-person learning, many schools had to make an adjustment to online learning. But that change may have set some students behind. But as KRHD reporter Rebecca Fiedler explains, the state's education agency is trying to help with that.
In an effort to make up for any lost learning that students experienced as a result of the pandemic, the Texas Education Agency is offering grant money to school districts that can be applied for all sorts of benefits, from additional learning materials to extra days of school.
Teachers across the board have been doing their best to make sure their students are all caught up after being out of the classroom for several months last year. Navasota ISD Superintendent Stu Music says his district has been in recent discussions about which of the TEA's COVID Learning Acceleration Support, or T-Class, benefits they will apply for. His administrators have indicated numerous areas of interest.
They rolled out, there was a survey that you indicated your initial interest in the different parts of the T-Class application. So accelerated learning was a key component of it. Accelerated learning is coming from House Bill 4545, which says any student that did not pass the STAR test last year requires an accelerated instruction plan or accelerated learning plan.
Applications just opened this Monday and must be made no later than August 20th. These e-grants do not require a formal narrative response, according to the TEA website, and accompany the survey with an online award calculator. Ultimately, these districts hope that TEA funding can continue to propel their students in a positive direction after being out of the classroom for so long.
Well, many companies are now telling employees to come back to the office. Meanwhile, worries are growing about the COVID-19 Delta variant. Our consumer reporter John Mattery shows what you can do if you would like to continue working from home so you don't waste your money.
It's the big move back to the office right now, but some workers are not ready for it. So we talked to the experts about how to talk to your boss about keeping a flex schedule. Beth Shermer has a schedule most office workers dream of.
I'm fortunate to have that kind of flexibility.
This chief officer at a downtown law firm and mom is in the office 2 or 3 days a week, at home the other days.
It's nice to know that if I have the HVAC guy coming and I can stay home and I'll be in.
Urban planner Chauncey Brown says he can't comprehend working in the office 5 days a week anymore.
This new capability that we have has made it a lot easier than I think we expected it to be.
But many of us are not so fortunate. The office doors are opening up, the face masks are coming off, and the boss wants you back in the office next week. But what if you're not ready to return full time?
Coming back to the office, some people aren't really ready for that.
Employment attorney Kelly Myers says if you want a flex schedule, don't just ask for it. Email your boss with specific reasons for staying home. Explain the benefit for the company.
Come to your employer with why working from home is good for the company and good for you. Make it a win-win.
Then explain why you'll be more productive working at home.
Give your examples about how your productivity was met or exceeded working from home.
And have a plan for face-to-face time.
How you will address meeting with people who are in the office now.
Beth Shermer's company is fine with flex schedules, but yours may not be, and you could find yourself missing too much.
The potential disadvantage is out of sight, out of mind.
Kelly says if everyone but you's back at the office, you run the risk of being passed over for promotions, so maybe just ask for 1 or 2 days at home so you don't waste your money. I'm John Mattery, 25 News.
The World Health Organization says COVID-19 cases could exceed 200 million cases in the next 3 weeks. That number is based off the current rate of the infection. Right now, the cumulative number of cases across the globe is over 190 million. The increase in cases is being attributed to more transmissible variants, relaxation of health measures, and increases in large social events. The CDC says people in the U.S. are living for a shorter amount of time. New data says life expectancy here in the United States fell by 1.5 years in 2020. That's the biggest one-year decline since World War II. Life expectancy for Black and Hispanic Americans dropped by 3 years. The CDC says the decline is mainly due to the pandemic, drug overdoses, and homicides, were also contributing factors. More than 91 million Americans live in a county considered to have high transmission of COVID-19. That's according to data published by the CDC. Health agencies say the county has high transmission if it has 100 or more positive cases per 100,000 residents. The number of people living in a county with low transmission has been cut in half since early June. About 15 million people live in those areas. And Pfizer and BioNTech have announced an agreement with a South African biopharmaceutical company to manufacture their COVID-19 vaccine there. The annual production from their facility will exceed 100 million doses, according to the companies. The move could ramp up vaccine availability in Africa by next year. The World Health Organization says that only 1.5% of the population in that continent is fully vaccinated.
Health leaders are calling it an urgent and overlooked consequence of the pandemic. They now estimate more than 1.5 million children around the world have lost a primary or secondary caregiver to COVID-19. The study published in The Lancet recorded the number of deaths across 21 countries from March of last year into April of 2021. The researchers say mental health and economic support for these kids must be a key part of responding to the pandemic. Life expectancy in Americans reached a historical low in 2020. That story tops the news feed. New numbers out today from the CDC show life expectancy fell by 1.5 years overall. But Black and Hispanic Americans faced an even greater 3-year decline. More than 3.3 million Americans died last year, and that's far more than any other year in U.S. history, with COVID accounting for 11% of those deaths. Well, a new study is showing the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine may not be as effective as the others. The BioT study is suggesting that 13 million people who receive this vaccine may actually need a second Moderna or Pfizer shot. The study has not been published or reviewed and contradicts studies by Johnson & Johnson that say a single dose is in fact effective. Well, healthcare workers in New York City-run hospitals will now be required to either be tested weekly for COVID-19 or be vaccinated. Mayor Bill de Blasio made the announcement today amid rising COVID cases there. The order does not apply to teachers, police officers, or other city employees. The pandemic is accelerating changes in nursing education. A new survey of nurse educators found nearly 40% plan to offer more online courses in the future, and 48% plan to invest more in virtual simulations over the next 2 years.
What this simulated practice does is gives them a lot of opportunity to practice and then reflect upon that practice. And you don't get that necessarily just from straight clinical training only.
Nurse educators say having students learn through virtual reality before doing their clinicals will better prepare them to work with real patients.
I'm thinking that our students, if they're totally focused on that skill that that they don't know, how do they pay attention to the dynamics of the relationship that's being built between them and the patient? How do they have any energy or ability to focus on the family that is sitting there waiting to hear information?
The president of the National League of Nursing says these new digital learning tools also address the real changes nursing programs are currently facing. Those include not enough classroom space or clinical sites, along with budget constraints. There also isn't enough nursing faculty, especially of color. The National League of Nursing says more than 80,000 qualified student applicants were turned away from nursing programs last year because of these issues. So far, they say nursing school tuition has held pretty steady and hasn't increased with the new investments in technology. Some people are getting hit with big fees for trauma care. It's happening even though they ended up going home the same day with a minor injury. How doctors say you can get around these costs.
When we come back, one major retail store is continuing their senior hours after originally saying they would end them soon. And President Biden is working to ramp up cybersecurity in the U.S. We'll tell you about his important meeting on the matter when we come back. States overpaid more than $12 billion in unemployment benefits during the pandemic. That's according to a report by the Government Accountability Office. Analysis found that $1.3 billion of that funding turned out to be fraudulent. However, a large percentage of overpayments was made through the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. Some states are now trying to recover that money. The Treasury Department has distributed more than $1.5 billion in rental assistance in the last month alone. That's more than it was distributed in the 3 past reporting periods combined. 16% of tenants are still behind on rent, according to the Center of Budget Policy and Priorities. The eviction moratorium is set to expire at the end of this month. The U.S. government is taking steps to amp up cybersecurity efforts. President Joe Biden and members of the national security team plan to meet next month with business leaders. It follows multiple cyber attacks from Russia on U.S. companies and a looming national cybersecurity threat from China. The meeting is slated for August 25th. Well, Costco has decided it will not completely get rid of its senior hours. Weeks ago, the warehouse chain announced it would end the senior hours on July 26th. But as the pandemic continues, Costco says the hours will still be available on some days. Seniors and people who are immunocompromised or have disabilities will be able to shop alone from 9 to 10 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now let's get a check of the weather with First Alert Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines.
And we have seen a few isolated to widely scattered showers and thunderstorms across the Brazos Valley today. A lot of it's been across the northern parts of our region with a little less activity over Bryan College Station and then a little more as you head down into southeast Texas. And that may try to creep up and we may see a few of those isolated to widely scattered storms move in through sunset, then things will begin to die off thereafter as we do have a spin in the atmosphere over here in Louisiana. Usually that's too far to the east, but this time of year that's slingshotting moisture right back into our area, and that's why we're seeing some of the scattered showers and thunderstorms develop across our region. So let's check out what we are anticipating here as we make our way through the overnight hours. It looks like any isolated thunderstorms start to die down, and we will have partly to mostly cloudy skies in the morning. During the afternoon hours, we will see isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms once again. That will likely head on into Friday as well. So we are going to see at least a couple more days, about a 20 to 30% chance of rain. And then we're going to see our rain chances start to come down as we make our way into the weekend, and temperatures will go up. In fact, temperatures may go up a little more tomorrow. We may have some 60s across our northern areas, but 70s for the rest of us in the morning. So a muggy start to your day. And then tomorrow, highs will make it into the lower 90s again. This is still below normal, but we will see these temperatures come up on Friday going into Saturday and Sunday as well, as we'll start to see more mid and upper 90s across the region as we're going to see our summer pattern start to slowly set on in. So 92 degrees on Thursday, 93 on Friday, about a 20 to 30% chance of rain. Looks drier over the weekend. Highs into the mid 90s. That means your heat index value is going to be over 100 degrees. So it is going to be quite hot as we make our way into Saturday, Sunday, even Monday at 97 there. And we're just going to kind of flirt with 96 and 97 degrees for most of next week. And again, heat index values will be over 100, so it is going to feel a little hotter across the Brazos Valley next week.
When it comes to trauma care, false alarms are expected. Someone involved in a car wreck could be sent to a trauma center and end up going home the same day with a minor injury.
The leading cause of preventable death after injury is bleeding, and most of that is internal bleeding. So it's not obvious necessarily to the paramedics that the patient is bleeding. And so someone who has a low blood pressure, high heart rate, those sorts of things tend to trigger these activations because of that risk of internal bleeding.
And in cases like that, it's better to be safe than sorry, even if it means an expensive hospital bill. But a recent analysis from Kaiser Health News found this may be happening too often in some parts of the country. In Florida, 27% of trauma patients went home the same day and were charged trauma activation fees last year. Those fees can cost up to $50,000 per patient. But Kaiser found cases like that at a center in Minnesota are rare. Only 5% of patients who were called in for a trauma alert did not receive trauma care.
I think one of the challenges we have is it varies from place to place. There is no national trauma system legislation, so there's going to always be some level of overactivating to avoid underactivating and putting patients at risk. But that should be monitored closely by the trauma center. I think that but on that model that it makes a lot of sense. Where we get into trouble is when that model is taken advantage of.
And Dr. Bolger says if you find yourself in this situation, there are some things you can do. Some hospitals are willing to negotiate these costs, or you can try to contest those charges. If it's a public hospital, look into any charity care offer to waive fees not covered by insurance. Some state unemployment programs may have paid people too much during the pandemic and are now trying to get that money back. A Government Accountability Office report says the overpayments amount to nearly $13 billion. It says more than $1 billion of that money accounts as fraud. Most cases of overpayment went to gig and freelance workers. Unemployment experts say this can happen when there is an agency error or an application is filled out incorrectly. People are finally receiving emergency rental assistance. The funding has been there, but states and cities have struggled to distribute it. Today, the Treasury Department reports $1.5 billion went to households in June. That's more than the last 5 months combined. It comes as the federal ban on evictions is scheduled to end in less than 2 weeks. Team USA beach volleyball player Taylor Krhd will reportedly no longer compete in the Tokyo Olympics after testing positive for COVID-19. This story tops the news feed. He was previously scheduled to play on Sunday. Well, just days before the Olympic Games opening ceremony, Tokyo's COVID infections have surged to a 6-month high. Japan's capital has recorded 1,832 new cases. Tokyo is currently under its 4th state of emergency, with fans banned from all venues during the Olympic Games. Jill Biden will make her first solo international trip as First Lady to the Olympic Games in Tokyo. After arriving at the capital's Air Force Base, she'll have dinner with Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga and his wife. Then Friday, the First Lady will hold a virtual gathering with members of the Team USA before attending the opening ceremonies that evening. Well, today, the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee is defending its support for athletes. This comes after Paralympic swimmer Becca Myers pulled out of the Games because she said the committee denied her request to bring her mom along as her personal care assistant. The committee says the pandemic forced a drastic reduction in support staffers able to travel to Japan.
Swimming is a part of who I am. It's given me identity as a person. I've always been known as Becca the swimmer, now not Becca the deaf-blind person, and now I feel very worthless as a person. And for someone who's trained for 5 years for this moment, especially an extra year with the pandemic, it just makes it all seem like it was for nothing.
Myers says her mom has been helping her at all of her international meets since 2017. Today, the International Olympic Committee picked Brisbane, Australia, to host the 2032 Summer Olympics. It's the first city to get the Summer Games under the new selection process that makes it so cities aren't bidding against each other. It will be Australia's 3rd time hosting the Olympics. New COVID restrictions started today in France for anyone visiting the Eiffel Tower or museums. Requirements include proof of a full vaccination, a negative COVID test, or proof you've recently recovered from COVID-19. The government says this is a first step in a new campaign to address the rising Delta variant cases. Well, you probably wouldn't think about sharing your resume on TikTok, but believe it or not, it's gaining popularity. Why this could open up the possibility of bias in the hiring process. We're in a new age of job hunting, and maybe you've already had to answer some home job application questions on video. Now TikTok is testing out video resumes. It's currently in its pilot phase. The platform would allow people to apply to jobs by sharing their experience and successes in a short video. Dozens of companies are on TikTok looking for people who specialize in experience with marketing, paralegal work, cloud developers, and real estate professionals. We spoke with a brand marketing manager for TikTok who came up with the idea for these video resumes. She says this new tool can provide help in ways a traditional resume may not.
The benefit of video resumes is that it can give you a dynamic perspective on a candidate. On TikTok, it's really about showing your creativity and authenticity, and that is really what's going to make your resume stand out.
Career experts agree that this new tool can help recruiters cast a wider net when looking for employees. But there are concerns. Generally, applicants are advised to not include their photo in their resume. Experts worry that video resumes can open the door to bias and discrimination.
Physical appearance, age, physical abilities that may be noticeable, accents for bias issues, those can all be potential issues on the video resumes, whereas with the paper resume, some of that could get by.
She says there isn't much applicants can do to fight bias in video resumes, but says if given the option, traditional paper resumes are the way to go, especially when it's paired with a powerful cover letter. TikTok resumes are being tested out until July 31st. Well, the pandemic has changed summer learning, possibly long term.
When a student is experiencing stress at home and coming into the classroom, you can't just expect that that student is going to flip a switch and be able to focus on reading and math.
How education advocates hope new funding could reshape learning.
Destination Bryan and the city of Bryan are kicking off the city's 150th anniversary celebration with a new self-guided tour, and it's being launched today. The Bryan, Texas History Tour will take visitors to over 20 historical sites and landmarks that were pivotal to the city of Bryan's history. Some of the locations featured on the tour include the LaSalle and Charles Hotels, the Aston Porter House, the Coulter House, the Aston Mansion, and many more.
There's the Carnegie History Center, there's the Queen Theater, a bunch of other buildings in downtown Bryan. Outside of downtown, there's Boonville Heritage Park, where Bryan kind of almost began, and the original seat of Brazos County. There's also the Brazos Valley African American Museum, which is the site of the first black school in Bryan. So this is really, a fun way to tie a lot of different cultures and demographics into our history.
The Bryan History Tour runs from now until December 31st. Those who sign up and check into all the stops on the tour can receive a Bryan-themed prize pack, which includes a t-shirt, magnets, and stickers. Brisbane, Australia is the latest city to add its name as an Olympic host. The International Olympic Committee is expected to award Brisbane the 2032 Olympics as it meets in Tokyo for the current Games. And if it happens, 2032 will be the third time an Australian city hosts the Summer Games. The last time the Olympics were held in Australia was in the year 2000 in Sydney. A deaf and blind American swimmer is withdrawing from the 2020 Paralympic Games. She says her mother has been helping her at all of her international meets since 2017. But because of COVID-19 restrictions, the committee says it's a role she can't play this time around.
Swimming is a part of who I am. It's given me identity as a person. I've always been known as Becca the swimmer. Now, not Becca the deaf-blind person, and now I feel very worthless as a person. And for someone who's trained for 5 years for this moment, especially an extra year with the pandemic, it just makes it all seem like it was for nothing.
Myers has won 6 medals in 2 previous Paralympics, including 3 gold medals in 2016. Well, last night, A&M's Chris Middleton and the Milwaukee Bucks knocked off the Phoenix Suns to win their second NBA championship. WTAW's Zach Taylor joins us now with sports.
Here's your 25 Sports Update with WTAW's Zach Taylor.
Hey KRHD viewers, Texas A&M football took center stage today during Day 3 of SEC Media Days. Speaking to the masses were head coach Jimbo Fisher, along with offensive lineman Kenyon Green and defensive lineman DeMarvin Leal. Now also taking the stage were players and coaches from Alabama, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. Texas and Oklahoma are reportedly looking at joining the SEC. The Houston Chronicle released a report this afternoon saying the Longhorns and Sooners were pondering a move from the Big 12 and that an announcement could be made in the next couple of weeks. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions. Giannis Antetokounmpo scored 50 points and pulled down 14 rebounds to lead the Bucks past the Phoenix Suns last night, 105-98 in Game 6. The U.S. women's national soccer team saw its 44-match unbeaten streak come to an end this morning, falling to Sweden 3-0 in the Olympic opener in Tokyo. The Texas Rangers are currently looking to put a stop to a 7-game skid against the Detroit Tigers. That one got underway at 6:10. Meanwhile, the Houston Astros go for a sweep over the Cleveland Indians tonight at Minute Maid. That one gets underway at 7:10. From the WTAW Sports Studio, I'm Zach Taylor.
Unfortunately, it took a pandemic, to bring the kind of resources from the state government and the federal government that we need.
Thousands of students are enrolled in summer programming for the first time, taking classes that go beyond reading and math. The programs are made possible by billions of federal dollars being given to districts across the country, aimed at combating the lost in the classroom. Amanda Brandeis shows us how some schools have used this money and how one man's effort is bringing musical instruments to districts across the country.
So, since it's in open tune right now, I can do F.
In order to perform,
Easy F.
An instrument must be tuned just right. But like a ukulele that hasn't been played in months,
I haven't seen anyone in so long.
Routines once normal can feel off pitch.
I felt like I was gonna be awkward.
Yeah, the socialization was what was missing online.
To help students perform this fall, summer programs are prioritizing fun.
Just gonna strum like this, guys.
When a student is experiencing stress at home and coming into the classroom, you can't just expect that that student is going to flip a switch and, be able to focus on reading and math.
The kids get really into it, like the happy songs, and then they've got the attacks of the pigeons, So I love how music displays emotions.
1, 2.
This is what students have always needed.
With state and federal funding,
Come here, Guapo.
San Diego Unified recruited help from nonprofits like Guitars in the Classroom.
When we get them, there's been no tension put on the strings whatsoever.
Before ending up in classrooms across the country,
It can be a very boring, tedious, laborious task.
shiny new ukuleles must first pass through this living room.
But just with the right person tuning it and with the right approach, any ukulele is, I consider, is a real instrument and worth putting your time into.
When Rodney Howard began tuning 5 years ago,
It's not for everybody.
he didn't expect a retirement hobby to become his life's calling.
It's probably pretty safe to say that I tune anywhere from maybe 800 to 1,000 a year. It's kind of become a passion for me.
Earning him the title Tuning Angel.
I have a very understanding wife.
To meet the summer demand, he helped tune hundreds of instruments in a matter of weeks.
These strings are susceptible to temperature changes, humidity changes. Some of them, you look at them wrong and they'll go out of tune.
While some see hours of repetition,
I see the goal. During all these Zoom classes, there were kids that were just on the fence. They were maybe not going to bother going to class that day. But because the ukulele was going to be used that day, they're looking forward to that. So they come to class because they can play the ukulele. Yeah, to me, that's exciting.
and he says a properly tuned instrument lays the foundation to learn.
In 20 years now, there'll be a kid who comes up to me and says, "Hey, aren't you Uncle Rodney? I think I had a class with you, and now I'm a ukulele recording star."
A lot of kids have really come alive the last couple months.
If we can say that our kids are achieving that, that sense of belief in themselves and confidence in their ability to learn for the rest of their lives, then we've done our job.
In San Diego, I'm Amanda Brandeis reporting.
Amanda, thank you so much for that report. Well, hundreds of birds across the country recently have been found either dead or fatally ill with unusual symptoms.
Mostly having crusty eyes and neurological symptoms too, so showing lethargy, twitchiness in their bodies, and disorientation.
What scientists have uncovered about the mystery illness so far, and what we all can do to prevent the spread.
First Alert Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines is standing by.
And as we check out the next couple of days here, we will see any isolated thunderstorms start to slowly come to an end, and that will happen tonight as well with the loss of daytime heating, partly to mostly cloudy skies as we move into Thursday morning. It's just pretty much going to be a repeat here of what we've seen all week long. A few more isolated thunderstorms possible Thursday afternoon, and then as we head into Friday, it'll probably do it again. So we'll have some partly to mostly cloudy skies in the morning, isolated thunderstorms on into the afternoon on Friday, and we will be looking at the potential for that coming to an end as we move into the weekend. So tonight, temperatures down into the upper 60s and low 70s across the northern half of the area, middle 70s as you head down to the south toward Bryan College Station at 74, but 72 down in Navasota and Brenham. And then tomorrow, highs will be into the lower 90s. Of course, it'll feel like the mid to upper 90s when you factor in that humidity. So it is going to still be very humid out there. Temperatures below normal right now, but we should start creeping closer to normal as we head into the weekend and next week. And you'll see that here in the 10-day forecast. 92 degrees on Thursday, 93 on Friday, 20 to 30% chance of rain here, and then it starts to dry out a bit more Saturday and Sunday. Partly cloudy skies around, 96 degrees for a high, then 97 on Monday, 96s and 97s continuing as we make our way through most of next week. And notice the lack of any moisture, as it looks like things are going to dry out just a little bit, but the humidity will still be around. That means those 96s and 97s will feel more like 100 to 105.
The U.S. is extending its restrictions on non-essential travel into Canada and Mexico until at least August 21st. The restrictions were set to expire tomorrow. This means more uncertainty for loved ones and family members who have been separated since March of last year. And there are many communities that rely on the dollars that come across an open border. But Chris Stewart went to a community where the mayor says an open border could actually slow down business in his town.
Like a fog, this pandemic has been a cloud over over what we once considered to be normal. But as we move through it, people are rediscovering what life will be like when it clears.
We here don't consider us necessarily America. We joke when we're going shopping at Costco. Hey, I'm going to America today. Do you need anything?
In Friday Harbor, Washington, an island town near Canada, Farhad Gattan's responsibilities go beyond entertaining the guests at his bed and breakfast.
Friday Harbor Grand.
He's also the town's mayor.
It's great to be able to make a comeback after such a tough year, but it's also pretty tiring.
He says strict measures like an early mask mandate kept COVID cases from climbing in 2020.
We had one hospitalization. We have a population of 7,500, approximately 7,500 on this island.
He also says the town's vaccination rate is more than 80%, as tourists flock by ferry here each day.
I've had 0 openings since beginning of June, and I probably won't have any until middle of September.
While other communities near Canada rely on the business that's been blocked by a closed border, this mayor says not here.
I have mixed opinions on that. I know business will go down because people will now have options of going across the border.
Most visitors here are Americans.
The exchange rate does not make it appealing for Canadians to come here.
Right now, keeping up with traffic from the mainland is hard enough.
It's ridiculous. Right now I'm turning away 5-6 people a day because I have no rooms.
Washington State allowed restaurants to go full capacity last month, but Debbie Rischel's still isn't 100%.
Like right now, actually, I could have more of my restaurant open, but I don't have enough people out front to do it.
Finding enough help isn't just a problem for a remote island like this. More than 90% of chambers of commerce nationwide say worker shortages are hurting their economies. Indiana, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Vermont are struggling the most. Experts say a shrinking number of working-aged people could mean this shortage will continue for years, even beyond a pandemic recovery.
I think people were anxious to get away, and this place was considered safe, and so we had a lot of business.
Step into Irene Herring's coffee shop, and you'll feel the pace of a busy season lost in many tourist towns last year.
We just kind of jump in with both feet.
But COVID and coffee don't define her path through the pandemic.
The beginning of the pandemic, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
She says she's doing fine now, but will be selling her shop after 32 years to enjoy this edge of America that is her home. And as many work to charter a path beyond the limits of a pandemic, she says, don't forget to go in the direction of what you value the most.
And in a time like that lasted as long as it has, it's nice to have something that brings you some pleasure.
In Friday Harbor, Washington, I'm Chris Stewart reporting.
There's a growing concern about a mysterious illness affecting wild birds. For several months now in multiple states, wildlife officials say birds have been either found dead or fatally ill with unusual symptoms. Maya Rodriguez looked into this and explains what experts are now saying all of us can do to help stop the spread of this mysterious disease.
For nature's flying feathered friends, bird-friendly gardens like this one can offer comfort and refuge.
The more physical structure you have in an ecosystem, the more different species you can have living there.
David Curson is Director of Bird Conservation for the Audubon Society's Mid-Atlantic chapter. Recently, he began hearing reports that concerned him about wild birds.
They were showing symptoms, mostly having crusty eyes and neurological symptoms too, so showing lethargy, twitchiness in their bodies, and disorientation.
Birds like these, seen in pictures provided by the Blue Ridge Wildlife Center, which has been treating some of the sick birds. Most showing symptoms die within days.
It's a mystery illness. There are wildlife disease labs around the country working on trying to figure out what the illness is. They have been analyzing corpses of dead birds that have been sent to them.
Reports of the mystery bird illness first emerged in May in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, but it appears to be spreading, with wildlife officials now finding similar sick birds in West Virginia, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Florida.
At least 1,000 birds have been affected, and it's probably quite a few thousand when you consider, the large geographic area.
Scientists have ruled out West Nile virus and avian flu, but otherwise remain stumped.
The most common species that have been affected so far are common grackles, American robins, blue jays, and European starlings. So common birds that are likely to come to your feeder.
Which is why experts are now recommending everyone remove their bird feeders to prevent the potential spread to other places of the mystery disease among any birds that might congregate there.
Then people who appreciate birds and love birds and like watching birds really need to be convincing the birds to socially distance right now.
Many people worry that the birds are depending on them, and what I would say is that it's midsummer and there is a huge amount of natural food around, and these birds really don't need human bird feeders at this time.
In addition to taking down bird feeders, experts say to also clean those feeders with a 10% bleach solution to kill off any potential pathogens. Don't handle any birds showing symptoms of the illness or any that have died, but wear rubber gloves if you have to, and keep your pets away from them. Finally, report it to your state fish and wildlife agency.
The last year has told us that we need to think a lot more about diseases in general. So we don't want to be alarmist, but I think it's really important to take a precautionary approach.
So that the sound of these songbirds doesn't fade away. In Baltimore, Maryland, I'm Maya Rodriguez.
Thanks for joining us for KRHD News at 6. For more news and weather, be sure to tune in for KRHD News at 10. Until then, have a great evening.